Hi students, it's Mrs. Nice again. I am continuing with chapter 27, The Renaissance Begins, and we are doing section 4, The Influence of Italian City-States. Remember, before you start reading, go ahead and look at the questions for this section. So it is, what were Italian city-states? How were they governed? So that means how were they run? What was their government like? How did Italian city-states become so powerful? And then question 4, identify the primary factor from this section that led to the start of the Renaissance and provide at least two supporting details that further explain how this led to the rebirth of classical culture and learning in Europe. So write the primary factor and then the supporting details or the supporting evidence here. Remember to use these terms when you can. For example, you'll definitely be able to use the term city-state and probably republic in your answer here, or in one of your answers here. So let's begin reading. 27.4, the influence of Italian city-states. The Renaissance began in northern and central Italy. One reason why it began there was the prosperity or the wealthiness of Italian city-states. In the late Middle Ages, most of Western Europe was made up of fiefs ruled by nobles. Above the nobles were monarchs, so like kings and queens. In Italy, however, growing towns developed independent city-states. Each city-state consisted of a powerful city and the surrounding territory, which might include other towns. So looking at this picture before we go on to the next page, this is a late 15th century map of Florence, one of Italy's most powerful city-states. So what we've learned so far is that the Renaissance begins in Italy because of how wealthy the city-states are. And in the Middle Ages, a lot of Europe was made up of fiefs ruled by nobles and kings, but Italy was different. Italy had these growing towns that would come to be known as city-states. And each city-state was pretty much a big, powerful city, and then the surrounding land or territory around that city, and that was considered the city-state. Going on to the next page, we can see a map. At the time of the Renaissance, Italy was not a unified nation. It was divided into many different city-states, some of which were extremely powerful. So there is no one country called Italy. Instead, you have these cities that become city-states with surrounding land that they control. So we could see some of the most powerful city-states on this map. We have Naples, we have, let's see, Florence right here, Siena, Venice. So you could look at this map of all of these powerful city-states. And then in purple right here, these are the papal states, which means it's controlled by the Catholic Church. Continuing. The Italian city-states conducted their own trade, collected their own taxes, and made their own laws. Some, such as Florence, were republics that were governed by elected officials. You can see over here, a republic is a form of government in which citizens elect representatives to rule for them. So the United States is a republic. We elect representatives to the Senate and the House of Representatives to help govern for us. And that is what some city-states were as well, such as Florence. They were republics. City-states acted almost like their own countries. They had their own trade, they collected taxes, some of them even made their own laws. Continuing. In theory, the power in republics belonged to the people. In fact, though, it often lay in the hands of rich merchants. During the Middle Ages, guilds of craftspeople and merchants became very powerful. During the Renaissance, groups of guild members called boards often ruled Italian city-states. Boards were supposed to change members frequently. However, wealthy families often gained long-term control. As a result, some city-states were ruled by a single rich family, such as the Medici family in Florence. Okay, so what this is saying is, yes, some of the city-states were republics, which technically mean the citizens got to elect representatives to rule for them. In reality, though, it tended to be the really wealthy people, the merchants, who gained control of these local governments. And in some cases, such as in Florence, it was a single wealthy family who gained long-term control of the boards or the guilds that ruled these city-states. And in Florence, the Medici family, which we'll be learning about later, becomes a very powerful family. Trade made the Italian city-states dazzlingly wealthy. Italy's central Mediterranean location in the middle of the trade routes connected distant places with the rest of Western Europe. People from all over Europe came to northern Italy to buy, sell, and do their banking. So trade makes Italy very, very wealthy because one, it's where a lot of trade goes through, and then people are coming to Italy not only to trade things, but also to do their banking. There's a lot of banks that start in Italy. Some Italian city-states developed specializations. Florence became a center for cloth making and banking. Milan produced metal goods and armor. The port city of Genoa was a trade center for ivory and gold from northern Africa. Venice, the most powerful city-state, had hundreds of ships that controlled the trade routes in the Mediterranean Sea. Silk, spices, and perfume from Asia flowed into Venice. Okay, so a lot of city-states, they end up specializing in one or two main things. So as it mentioned, Florence specializes in making cloth and banking. Other city-states specialize in different things. All right, last paragraph for this section. The city-state's wealth encouraged a boom in art and learning. Rich families paid for the creation of statues, paintings, beautiful buildings, and elegant avenues or streets. They built new centers of learning, such as universities and hospitals. From the city-states of Italy, Renaissance ideas spread to the rest of Europe. So what this is saying is, yes, these city-states became very wealthy because of trade, and as they became more wealthy, the people started encouraging art and learning, and these rich families pay for not only art but also universities and hospitals. And so it's from Italy that it will start, and it will eventually spread to the rest of Europe. Remember to go ahead and answer your questions for this section. So what were Italian city-states? How were they governed? The vocab words go with these ones. How did they become so powerful? And then right here, what's the primary factor from this section that led to the start of the Renaissance? And of course, that's just the primary factor is the title of the section. So the primary factor is going to be, let's go back up to it, Italian city-states, or the wealth of Italian city-states. And then you'll go ahead and write about two supporting details for that showed how they were so powerful and helped the Renaissance happen. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and I'll make another video for the last section. Good job, you're almost done.